Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of the Foreclosurepedia podcast. Foreclosurepedia podcast presentation of the Foreclosurepedia radio network, which premieres each Sunday evening at 2300 hours. I'd like to talk to everybody a little bit tonight about paperwork. This is going to be a basic screencast. I get tons and tons of questions about how do we do this paperwork, because really when you start with a company, there seems to be this belief system that everybody ought to know how this works. Tonight we're going to talk about the Hpir, which is basically the property inspection report. There's a part 1, a part 2, and a part 3. We're going to cover part 3 tonight. So let's actually get right to it. I'm going to pull up an order that I actually have that's going on. You can see right here my date, the date that the job was actually completed, actually today. It's going to ask you some basic questions. Was it vacant? The type, the key code, number of stories, bathrooms, are the utilities on? More importantly is this section right here. Pre-conveyance activities. This is important. When the banks roll these properties into HUD, and pretty much all properties are going to eventually roll into HUD with the exception of conventional loans. You'll see it every now and then. You'll even see some properties on reverse mortgages under 24 CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, that'll roll in. It's important because if the banks have just kind of jacked around and not done what they were supposed to have done, HUD has the opportunity of kicking them back to the bank and making them do their actual jobs. Excuse me. So we want to make sure we've answered these correctly. Down here in part 3, now in part 1 and 2 this is going to be section 11. Part 3 it's section 17. We need to make positively sure that we're answering these properly. I get into another detailed video on this because surprisingly I'm hearing, and especially out west, nobody charges, or very few contractors are charging these houses. What I mean by that is using a generator to electrically energize the property to ensure that the HVAC, the electrical, the lights, such like that work. Now I don't know if that's a contractual issue under the M&M 3 or what. Out here, at least on the East Coast, we do it. They pay very well, so if you're not doing this right now, you want to be talking to whomever you are working for and say, hey, we heard Foreclosurepedia discussing the fact that they take a generator and charge the house and they make pretty good money. What do we need to be doing to get into that? We have other videos on that, both in the paid and unpaid section. You can look those up. Anyway, we need to go through here and we need to check what's going on. This section right here, you need to make sure you have your act together, because you got to designate whether it's a heat pump or air handler. How you tested it, important. If there's any information here on the HVAC notes, we didn't used to put anything here if it was operational. Now they want something in there. Why? I don't know. I just do what they tell me because it pays. So we have here, we're dealing with the heat and air. This next section, section B, Bravo, we're dealing with the electrical system. Section C, Charlie, we're dealing both with the appliances and the cabinets. I guess simply because that kind of throws it in the kitchen area. I'm not sure. We're going to actually add a little bit to the notes here. All appliances were functional with generator. Section D or delta is going to deal with the plumbing. Generally, when you do this, you're also going to follow up with a winterization report. Zip ties. You'd carry a bag of zip ties. Make no mistake, what you want is white, because of the fact that generally you're taking pictures of these meters down in a dark area and that white's going to show up. I always actually use my finger to point at it in case the flash blinds it. Section E or echo deals with the water heater. You need to designate whether it's gas or electric. This is a question I get a lot. You checked NA are not applicable here. Was it functional? You checked no here. And that's because of the fact that although we do visually see it, we cannot attest to the fact of whether it is functional or not, because generally 9 times out of 10 it's either going to be drained, which means you drained it, or it was previously drained. Sanitary and drainage system functional. What we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, is we're talking about the P-traps. How do we test it? We pour water down the P-trap. We either report that there was leaks or no leaks. If the water went down the P-trap, obviously went into the sewer or the septic system. So we report whether it passes or fails here. That's pretty much the verbiage you want to use right there. I've never had an issue with it. You have to designate whether or not you're on city or county sewer or a septic system right in here. Anytime you have a blank area that you're not filling in, let's get that NA checked right there. The roof. What we're doing here is we're attesting to the fact of whether or not it visually appears okay. And in the roofing section, you can see when we come over here, how did you inspect it? Well, I generally do it from the ground because these jobs aren't paying enough should I fall off a ladder and break my back. Attics, we need to say whether or not there's an attic there. If there's no attic, we're going to go with the NA. We're going to document if there was one, if there's debris in there or not. Gutters. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. Let's say, for example, that my stove and range were missing. Now, we have 17C, 17 Charlie. I'm going to go here, and I would go down to 17C, and I would click that. And then I would come over here, and I would type some notes. I would click the Add Notes, and I would be done. Because I made a correction, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to update that there. Basically, in a nutshell, that's the Hpir Part 3. We'll have a video out on Part 1 and 2 coming up soon. Thank you all again for tuning in to another edition of Foreclosurepedia podcast. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, if you'd like to see something special aired, drop me a line. COO@foreclosurepedia.org. I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and you have a good evening.